Right, now the statue of Cecil John Rhodes that stands outside Oriel College in Oxford was in the news this week, inspired by the Black Lives Matter protests sweeping the globe. Rhodes Must Fall campaigners have picked up their banners to demand its removal once again. His statues have been at the center of conflict for years, both as a symbol of the institution's inability to truly listen to experiences of its black students, as well as physical evidence of its tendency to abandon moral standpoints in fear of offending and losing wealthier donors. The Rhodes Must Fall movement began in South Africa. It was in 2015 when Chumani Maxwele, a student at UCT at the time, threw a bucket of excrement over a statue of Cecil Rhodes that sparked the Fees Must Fall movement that swept the country and is currently gripping Oxford. Take a look at this.
Down, Rhodes, down! Down, Rhodes, down! Down, Rhodes, down! Down, Rhodes, down!
Chumani joins us now. A very good morning, Chumani. Thank you so much for joining us on Weekend Dawn. Now, did you ever think that your actions of 2015 would have such far-reaching effects?
Good morning to you. Good morning to your viewers. Well, I was not aware that we'll have such an impact, but of course, now we know that our actions were in the right directions.
Now, it seems not much has changed since then. It looks like the battle for exactly what you were fighting for has now just exacerbated and grown to other countries. Are you surprised?
Well, of course, we are not surprised with the slow progress of action and pro-action, both within South Africa as well as globally. But what we are happy about is that our ideas in the global south have been able to permeate to the global north. And of course, that is important for us because for us, it was not just about protest, but it was also about the intellectual production of ideas by us as black students and interpreting our own reality. And of course, our theory, as it is accompanied by practice, it has been experienced now intellectually and influencing some of the global action around the world.
Let's talk about here at home. When you look at other protests that have taken place here versus protests that are taking place like Black Lives Matter, do you think in terms of protests that will also never cease at the moment because the fight is still a fight?
Well, I mean, the contemporary activists, we are following the trend of the black tradition of protest and action. And of course, those who were oppressed harshly always tend to produce the most pragmatic and energetic ways of protesting. And I think for us, we have a serious, rich history in terms of protest and organizing and mobilizing people. And the recent protest by Black Lives Matter in the US also follow that black tradition of protest and mobilization of people based on the slave trade in the US and the racism in the US and here at home. And of course, we share some of the best traditional ways of protest. And I think they speak to our experiences as black people. Therefore, it is not our beginning. We are just joining a long list of protest movements in our countries. And I think we are proud of ourselves for taking up the spear, following our forefathers.
What's the amicable solution with regards to these statues? There should be something that everybody can all agree on. What should the plan be going forward? And I mean, I'm not just talking about the UK and South Africa. I'm talking anywhere else where these kind of statues are erected.
Well, the starting point is what is it that we, as the people across the world, particularly in South Africa, agree on as a nation? Remember, South Africa is struggling to give birth to the nationhood. We do not have a nationhood as a people. We are still divided along the racial lines. And therefore, what we are trying now to do is to envisage what is the shared values. And I think from there we'll be able to then speak directly to the future of South Africa. And of course, the future of South Africa has nothing to do with the iconographic symbols of our oppressors and the colonizers. And remember, for us, it's really a brutal history where our people were killed, were enslaved, were paid slave wages, you know. Now, we have a responsibility, therefore, to make sure that those who have fallen and were brutally murdered by Cecil Rhodes and his lives are happy in their graves because of our action. We cannot claim to have a united South Africa or a non-racial South Africa, but our history and our landscape are dominated by the symbols of those who oppressed us, brutally oppressed us, not just oppression, but the brutally killed our people. Now, the many wars that took place in this country, and for us, the many people who have fallen and were killed. Therefore, we are taking seriously the project of reconciliation, and we are taking seriously the project of total liberation of black people. The arrangement that were made by our leaders in the 1990s do not bind us going forward as young people in this country. And of course, we are happy that our leaders were able to make decisions that they've made, but we can no longer, 25 years down the line, pretend as if things are right or there's no problems. That's why for us, we say way forward is to remove these symbols. These symbols don't represent us as South Africans, both black and white, colored and Indians. No one shares these values, therefore they must go away. And I'm happy that the Department of Arts and Culture, led by Minister Nathi Mthethwa, they are agreeing with us that indeed these statues must go away based on the ministerial task team that he himself constituted, and it recommended that these statues must go away.
Now, how do we bridge the historic divide as South Africans?
Well, the historical divide, we need to bridge it by honesty. We will recall that the 1990s and late 80s negotiations were dishonest negotiations, on the sense that the Nationalist Party made it clear that the African people would not totally get liberation, and of course the means of production and the economic means of production in our country are still controlled by white people in this country, and the large corporations and businesses in our country are held by them. The land question, and of course these are part and parcel of the things that we can no longer go forward without resolving. And today, the huge population of our white counterparts are still resisting to release our land. Therefore, we have to iron out these historical questions that were left, and we are prepared to really deal hands-on with this question. And of course, we understand that our leaders, when they negotiated these issues, they negotiated under severe stress and a serious political suppression, of course, influenced by the global forces and the balance of forces in the West and in America. But now we do not have so much force now influenced by the West and the European countries. We can therefore, as black people, take a decision to say, look, we do not want A, B, and C. We can no longer compromise on certain things. You would remember that white people in this country, they have not taken any form of compromise. It is always us as black people who have forgotten white people, who have forgiven white people, and who have always compromised. But it is about time now white people are able to compromise and take decisive action towards what we want as black people. And part of that is to remove these iconographic symbols. Without those ideas being agreed upon, there is no future for South Africa's unity.
In closing, in a quick minute, please, Chumani, what would your advice be to the students out there who still have to get a diploma or a degree, but are still in institutions that are, what you could say, very white, ones that still have the statues, and also in their fight for getting a free education? What would your message be to them out there?
Well, we cannot compromise the idea of education. And these things, we must do them collectively and simultaneously. I mean, our leaders did it. They managed to graduate during apartheid, and they managed to protest and yet get their degrees. I mean, the likes of Sobukwe or Tambo, Nelson Mandela were able, were leaders who were very educated. Therefore, we have no reason and excuse for those of us who are in a democratic state to then protest and equally get our degrees. But of course, young people must not think that this generational mission of removing colonial white settler symbols in our country is either or. This task is our task. We don't want 20 years down the line or 50 years down the line, the future generation of this country will still face these iconographic images. But we can only do that when we are well informed, well educated, and that we cannot compromise on. And of course, we just had a 2-hour meeting with the Rhodes Must Fall in Oxford. We're clear on what needs to be done there and what they have to do. And of course, we cannot compromise on our education. And of course, we advise students at Rhodes University to really work hard to make sure that Rhodes University has changed its name. It cannot be called by the name of a settler who brutalized our people. And of course, our advice to young people is to say they must continue studying, because we need intellectual as well educated class in our country, so that we can be able to analyze what is happening in our country and be able also to free our people from the bondage of slavery and wages. And we can see now there's the high rise of unemployment among young people. It is our responsibility, therefore, to be highly educated and make sure that we are disciplined. And then, of course, as Cabral teaches us, that theory and practice is more important than anything else.
Chumani Maxwele, thank you so much. Chumani is a higher education analyst, and you're speaking to us about the Rhodes Must Fall movement.